VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Well, thank you, Mr. Morris, and good to have you with us on Crosstalk as we have a very important topic today. I mean, have we not been exposed to reasons to be concerned around our country? I mean, the bomb blast in Boston, and when we see all of the other issues that are coming to light, the homegrown jihad and all the stuff that's happening, and then we find the apathetic attitude that is floating around among Christendom today, that Islam, well, we just don't want to say anything because we might offend them. Well, we're going to be talking about this today and also about the intrusion of Islam literally marching into our culture and taking over. Now, our guest today is Martin Mawyer. He began his career as a freelance journalist, resulting in his position some years back as the editor-in-chief of the Moral Majority Report, Dr. Jerry Falwell's report. And in 1990, he founded the Christian Action Network, a nonprofit organization created to protect America's religious and moral heritage. He's produced a number of documentary films, including Homegrown Jihad. He's the co-author of a book presently coming under fire entitled Twilight in America. You can learn more about this. And then the untold story of Islam terrorist training camps inside of America. I welcome Martin Mawyer. Good to have you with us, Martin.
Thanks, Dick. It's great to be here.
Well, let me just say this, that you're focusing a lot of your attention on the topic of Islam, but I'd like to back up just a bit and have you tell us a little more about the Christian Action Network and how it came about.
Well, it came about because I was the editor of Dr. Jerry Falwell's Moral Majority Report, and eventually Dr. Jerry Falwell shut down the Moral Majority, and I felt the issues that I had been dealing with for those years were still at play and at large in America. They needed to be exposed and dealt with. So I took a bit of a break, learned how to set up my own organization, and in 1990, I established the Christian Action Network as a way to keep Christian Americans informed on the issues and give them some helpful guidance in how we could probably take back America. I say probably take back America because I've been doing this now for a quarter of a century, and I remember some of the issues that we have been working so hard on for so many years back then. And I look at it now, if we have to say that not just us, but all Christianity has failed in defending America's true heritage as we look around this country, and we just see all of our values, all of our freedoms, all of our morals, all of our biblical traditions just toppling over like dominoes now.
And as you talk about taking back America, those are noble words. But when there's apathy and lack of information and then lack of motivation in the hearts of people, we can have all this stuff in our head. We can even have it in our books and information, but unless, well, like the Bible says, him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. And there's more sins than just the sins of commission. There's the sins of omission, where America, who has known the blessings of God, has allowed God to become the focal point of blasphemy, spitting in the face of God, joking about sacred things, and then, of all things, the desecrating of marriage and of life itself with abortion. Is it any wonder that this nation is starting to crumble?
I don't think it's any wonder that the nation is starting to crumble. Back during the early Jerry Falwell days, and I was a part of that very exciting movement, and the voices that rose up in America at the time, a lot of excitement, and even though the media was still bashing us way back then, as you know, are quite aware of,
sure,
we still felt, though, that America was made up of Christians who would take a stand and defend what America is about. And, I just think it's so unfortunate over the past 2 decades that, in essence, what happened was this Christians were upset. Yes, they wanted to exercise their voice and their disgust about what they saw was going on. But for the battle that it would have taken to actually keep America what we want America to be, there just wasn't the stomach for it. And I'm not even sure nowadays there's the stomach among Christians in general to wage the war that's necessary to keep our freedoms that we now have. The battle is so much worse now,
yes,
and it's so hard to describe it in just 60 seconds. But if we don't wake up, if we don't finally put our foot down, it will all be lost.
Martin, it says in the Bible, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." And one side, of course, the Bible talks in Ezekiel about the watchman on the wall. And if the watchman sees the enemy approaching but does not warn the people, then their blood will be on his hands. But if the people hear the warning and do not respond, then their blood is on their own hands. And one of the things that I am overwhelmed with is the apathy within the church today. And I'm not anti-church, but I feel that oftentimes many of our clergy are either uneducated, have no interest in dealing with the subject that is destroying America's culture. And I'm not trying to create a Christian culture, because someday the Lord's going to come back and take his believers, take his followers to be with him. But we've got children that are growing up in this mess. And when we see marriage being destroyed, this week I watched on Fox News as a homosexual bragged out loud to the fact that we really mean to destroy the institute of marriage. That's exactly what they said. We mean to destroy it, and we have been lying to the public because our goal is to destroy marriage. I mean, that came out in quotes and is as though nobody cares.
ABC had a show on this fall called The New Normal. And it was about, two homosexuals in a marriage-type relationship, and they called it the new normal. I mean, just the words alone should have infuriated all of us, that what we're doing in a heterosexual marriage now is no longer normal.
No.
This is the new normal. And the number of pro-homosexual programming that was on the networks this past season would astound anybody. I mean, some of them, the programs were just totally devoted to homosexuality, but on almost every program you watch, there were homosexual characters, and you're more likely now to watch a TV program on networks where 2 men are kissing or 2 women are kissing, and you rarely ever see heterosexual relationships of affection at all. And they really want to cram it down your throat. They want you to see it until you think that it's nothing but normal activity. And this is just the homosexual issue, and that's just one part of the tragedy that we see going on every day around the world.
Well, Martin, as we think of what we've seen even this past week, a sports figure coming out of the sports world and announcing he's gay, and he ends up getting accolades from the President of the United States, thanking him for having the courage to come out, and then his wife, the President's wife, tweeting accolades as well, proud of this type of thing. We've had our kids in public schools that have been trained in this thing called diversity, and being educated that you dare not even think negative thoughts about abnormal relationships. Well, now, just getting back to the subject of Islam, which is a specter, which I follow it very closely. This, to start our discussion about the apathy that's out there. Just this week, we had a program, a young lady who attends Wisconsin Lutheran College. She wanted to bring in a fine Christian minister whose name is Usama Dakdok. He was raised in Egypt. He was trained in Islam. He speaks and writes Arabic. He has translated the Quran into literal English. And so they invited him to come and speak to their group of college Republicans. And the administration, and I have copies of the letter that was sent from the administration warning them that they could not have him on the campus because of his extreme views on Islam. Now, this is a college that calls itself a Christian college, a Lutheran college. And so they forbid them to have them there. Then when the issue came to light, the college backed away and claimed, well, no, he's welcome to come on campus at some other time. But the reason that we've canceled it is because that the protocol of having a speaker without having proper paperwork was really the reason, and it wasn't because of extreme issues, though the paper that came from the administration said it was because of extreme views. And so this is a thing that's still standing wide open. There are Lutherans throughout the area that are absolutely shocked that this type of thing would happen, where these young people, sincere to learn about Islam, and Mr. Dakdok does a daily program on this network, and we know him well. And he's not an extremist. He's a man who knows Islam for what it is. But now there are issues that you've followed many instances taking place in Dearborn, Michigan. What can you tell us about this?
I personally have not been to Dearborn. I have spoken to people who have been at these events. Mm-hmm. Dearborn, Michigan is quickly becoming what Europe has, no-go zones. Mm-hmm. In Europe, there are Islamic areas where if you are not a Muslim, you're just not allowed to come in. It's very dangerous for law enforcement to enter it, fire and rescue to enter it. And I fear that Dearborn is becoming America's first version of Europe's no-go zone areas. The police are dominated by the Muslim doctrine. The courts are dominated by the Muslim doctrine. Christians certainly are not welcome in the area. They are constantly violating Christians' constitutional rights, and Christians have succeeded in filing successful lawsuits against the city of Dearborn for the violation of those rights, but it does not stop. Dearborn is determined to turn it into an Islamic area where people who do not believe in the Islamic faith are just not welcome to come in.
Well, we're coming up on a hard break here, but when we come back, we're going to be talking about the issue, a book that you co-authored, a recently published book called Twilight in America, The Untold Story of Islamist Terrorist Training Camps Inside America. Now, the title sounds very alarming, and you make a number of allegations in your book. Do you have documented proof of these places?
Well, yes, we have documented proof, and everything in our book is documented. And when this particular group filed a $30 million lawsuit against us in February because of that book, we are excited to prove every allegation that is in our book in a court of law and let it stand before a jury to determine whether the information that we exposed is true or not. And we're confident, 100%, that we're going to win this lawsuit.
They have actually sued you for $30 million?
Absolutely, sued us for $30 million.
What are their allegations? What are their allegations against you?
Well, we cite in this book their criminal activity, their terrorist activity, how they've committed bombings, stabbings, gun running, drug running, fire, just about every type of criminal activity that you possibly could conceive of: welfare fraud, unemployment fraud, workman compensation fraud, food stamp frauds, pickpocketing, and we put it all in a book. This group has been in the United States for 30 years. They got some 36 areas that they live in the United States, some of them very large compounds where they train members into guerrilla-style Islamic warfare, and we exposed it all in our book, and they do not like it.
We're going to be right back. We have about a break for a minute here, and we'll be right back with our guest, Martin Mawyer. Stay tuned.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, how did the dinosaurs become extinct?
Chris, strange as it may seem, we don't know for sure that the dinosaurs are extinct. There are some unconfirmed rumors that dinosaur-like beasts still exist in remote areas around the world. In general, however, if they're not all extinct, they're very rare. The theories of dinosaur extinction are many and varied. A popular one these days is that a meteorite hit the Earth and killed all the dinosaurs, but many experts have rejected this idea in recent years. I think the dinosaurs, after Noah's flood, found the environment so dramatically different from before the flood that they just weren't a good fit and eventually went extinct. Couple that with humans hunting them because they were a menace. At any rate, they seem to be mostly all gone now. At least that's how I see it from a back to Genesis perspective.
For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org. I'm Chris O'Brien. Thanks for tuning in.
And welcome back to Crosstalk, where the moments go by so quickly. There's much we want to learn today. Our guest is Martin Mawyer. Began his career as a freelance journalist. He is now the executive officer and founder of the Christian Action Network, a nonprofit organization created to protect America's religious and moral heritage. He's produced a number of documentary films, including Homegrown Jihad. He is the co-author of a book presently coming under fire entitled Twilight in America, the Untold Islamic Terrorist Training Camps Inside America. They've sued him for $30 million or so. But the issue here, of course, we're going to find out more about this today. As Martin, there's an individual named Ali Aziz. Who is he, and how does he come into the story?
Yeah, Ali is an interesting individual. He is a undercover informant for the New York Police Department, and he spent 8 years inside of this particular Islamic terrorist organization that goes by the name of Muslims of the Americas. Now, a lot of your listeners probably never heard of this group before, but they probably have heard of Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl. Daniel Pearl was on his way to interview the leader of these American terrorist training compounds in the United States when he was kidnapped, beheaded, and then later dismembered. Daniel Pearl wanted to investigate allegations that the shoe bomber Richard Reed was one of his followers, and he also wanted to question him why he has these Islamic compounds inside the United States. And he paid the ultimate price for that journalistic venture that he went on. Twilight in America is the book that completes Daniel Pearl's story. It is to inform Americans about this particular group that's inside the United States for the past 30 years. Well, one of the individuals that came forward after we released our film, Homegrown Jihad, which was a documentary version of these terrorist camps, was an individual by the name of Ali Aziz. And he called me and said, look, you know, I am no longer with the NYPD, but I did spend 8 years inside of these compounds, and I want you to come to New York and talk to me, and let me tell you the story about what goes on inside of these compounds. And we did meet him, and he explained that, you know, this is a group of individuals whose sole goal is to one day fight a holy war, a jihad against America, when Sheikh Jelani in Pakistan finally gives them the thumbs up to commit those acts. They have Islamic guerrilla warfare training that goes on to the compounds. And here's a quote in the book from him. He says, these kids, meaning the members of the compounds, these kids have been living their whole lives to fight a holy war. That's exactly what these compounds are designed to do. Yet they continue to exist and continue to expand and grow. The first one of these compounds was shut down in 1992 in the state of Colorado by a very determined governor and Colorado investigator. But outside of that, pretty much these compounds in other states are free to exist, free to train, free to commit the criminal activity that everyone in law enforcement knows that they're committing. And it's quite an embarrassment on our nation that in this era where we have homegrown jihadists running around killing people, that these compounds continue to exist.
When you're talking about these compounds, you mentioned Colorado. Can you give us any other ideas, at least generally, where these places are?
Sure. They have these compounds in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, New York, Michigan, Massachusetts, Texas, California, and other states as well, West Virginia. They're just scattered around the United States. Now, some these places, they have what's called a presence, meaning they have a lot of members living inside the community, and most of these cases they have actually compounds, and these compounds can be anywhere from 10 to 12 acres all the way up to, well, they had one in California that was 300 acres big. The one in California is kind of interesting. It was called Balladula. It sat on 300 acres of land, and the leader of that compound decided to start a fake charter school program, meaning it was a woman. She set up all these schools and got money from the state of California for her charter schools to the tune of $1.2 million, and none of these schools existed. When the state finally realized they were being scammed by this particular group out of over $1 million, they did arrest her and they sent her to jail for 14 years. And that's typical. Whenever the leader of one of these camps gets shut down, they abandon the compound and they move elsewhere, and then it's like searching a needle in a haystack to see where they were going to go after that. But these are compounds that are real. They have most of them have guardhouses out in front of them. They have armed guards that surround them, and they do guerrilla-style training inside of these compounds.
And there's been you've had people that have gone in there. This Ollie has seen it from the inside.
You know, it's interesting. The Alley is just one of the many people in law enforcement who are aware that what goes on inside of these compounds. Because of our investigation, we have been able to get a hold of very confidential and exclusive law enforcement reports that has detailed which of these compounds have actual training on them and firearm training. And there's probably at least 10 of them now that do the actual firearm training inside of these compounds. But the whole goal is these people are living by themselves. They rarely come out of the compound unless the leaders want to come out and create some type of havoc. But most of the time, these compounds are very secluded. The women and the children never, ever step foot off the compounds unless they're just going to their job or pick up their welfare check. And the other more interesting and I think kind of frightening thing is that they're turning these compounds into little mini-states. For instance, their compound in Hancock, New York, sits on 80 acres of land, and they have now named the compound the town of Islamberg. They have actually appointed a mayor, a deputy mayor, and 4 council members to run the town of Islamberg. Now, this isn't a real town. It's not. No one there is actually elected. But nevertheless, they have what you and I would perceive as real officials running this particular town. It's quite criminal. And they enforce Sharia law on the people who live there. They have to abide by Sheikh Jelani's law, and he's got a number of Islamic rules of do's and don'ts on those compounds, such as you're not allowed to watch TV, and you're not allowed to exercise birth control, and many other crazy laws that he has. If you're caught violating those laws, and this is from Ali Aziz, the undercover informant, he told me that if you're caught violating those laws, they'll take you to a tree. They don't care how old you are. He watched one woman who's 50 years old who was tied to a tree and just severely beaten at the tree for violating one of Sheikh Jelani's laws in the town of Islamberg. So they're setting up these little mini-states within inside of their own state, and law enforcement basically just lets them do it.
Now, the news reported that the group Muslims of the Americas is bringing action against you for defamation and libel over your book. Have you pulled it from circulation?
No, they want to place a gag order on me, and they also want to stop the book from any further publication, and that's what they're asking the judge to rule on this case in addition to the $30 million they want. What happened, though, is the book came out and it was very explosive. It got a lot of law enforcement attention and a lot of counter-jihad attention, but more fearful to them, it caught the attention of a lot of their members that are secluded away almost in a kidnapped version on these compounds. And some of these people in the compounds do not know the terrorist history of this group. They don't even know who these people are who are ruling over them every day of their lives. And when the book came out and they exposed their terrorist connections, they had very nervous members there. What am I a part of? Why am I a part of this? Are we really part of a terrorist group? So in one sense, I think they felt they had to sue us to then go back to their own members and say, see, we're taking care of that Martin Mawyer fellow and that Christian Action Network. We're bringing a liable $30 million libel suit against them in court, and we'll show you that all this stuff that he's saying about us is made up. But most of the members in the compound knew who Ali Aziz was. He spent 8 years inside of the compound. So when he is quoted in my book detailing the crimes that the leaders of these compounds have committed and the terrorist activity that they're behind, it's very difficult for the leadership to then tell their people that I'm making up Ali Aziz. They know who he is. They've seen him, and therefore they're in a very big predicament with their own members because of the allegations that are in the book. So they feel they have to shut it down.
Martin, if there are truly Islamic training camps, such as what you say, why do we not hear of such things from the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, or even local law enforcement?
That's a very good question. Up until the year 2000, right before the 9/11 attacks, this group was placed on the State Department's list of known terrorist organizations, and they had been on that list for some 10 years. Then in the year 2000, the State Department decided to take this group off the list of terrorist organizations. They were asked at a media event, the State Department officials, why did they decide to remove this group from the list? And they said, well, they haven't committed a crime in the past year, so we decided to remove them from the list.
You got to be kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. And that was one of the most bizarre statements. That would be like saying, well, bin Laden did not commit a crime in the year 2003, so let's go ahead and take him off the list of terrorist organizations.
I think, Martin, the reason they took him off the list because they had to have room to instead put in the names of evangelical Christians.
And that is the scary thing, isn't it, Dick? The whole emphasis of our government is focusing away from the homegrown Islamists out there and now focusing on Christians as if somehow they are the new terrorists that have to be watched and monitored and curtailed and embarrassed and shut down.
Martin, do you believe Islam has an agenda for America?
I believe they have an agenda because they're free to say what that agenda is. They want to conquer the world. Most people only hear what they see on the news, and the news is very liberal, but I follow what their statements are coming out of the Middle East and the rest of Europe every day. And even in Europe, the imams there are very bold to say our goal is to conquer Europe. It is to make the Islamic flag fly over Europe. And they say when that's done, we want the flag to fly over the White House. There's no question what their ultimate goal is.
As we think about America, and I'm sure apparently you believe America needs to be concerned over homegrown terrorism, I guess the question, as we have seen what's happened just in Boston at the marathon bombing, and again, these are people that are part of Islam. Now, the Islamic community seems to be the focal point for all of this terrorism. Some night talk show host said those statements, and it caused a lot of furrowed brows when he said it, but he said the terrorism is coming out of the Islamic community. Nobody wants to blame Islam as Islam. They want to say the radicalization of Islam.
Absolutely correct.
We're going to be back in 60 seconds with our guest, Martin Mawyer. We shall return.
Technology continues to expand the ways we can send and receive audio files, and the Crosstalk program is no exception. The most current way to hear Crosstalk is live at 2 p.m. Central, repeated at 8 p.m. Central on the VCY America network, or on the internet at crosstalkamerica.com or from Shoutcast. There are MP3 files of the most recent programs available at crosstalkamerica.com. But sometimes it makes more sense to have a program on CD to listen again, or to give to a friend or relative, or even to play for a church gathering. Order Crosstalk CDs for a donation of $6 each by calling 1-800-729-9829. Just mention the date or dates of the programs you need. Or mail your request to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. And again, that phone number for Crosstalk CDs is 1-800-729-9829. That's toll free, 1-800-729-9829.
And welcome back to Crosstalk, where today we're talking with Martin Mawyer. He is the president, chief executive of Christian Action Network, an organization created to protect America's religious and moral heritage. He's fully aware of what's going on. He has produced a number of documentary films, including Homegrown Jihad. He's the author of a book presently under fire entitled Twilight in America. He's being sued by an organization called Muslims of the Americas for $30 million plus. The story of this book, I understand it is available. Martin, is this correct? People can get it?
People can get it on Amazon.com or our website at ChristianAction.org. So either way, Amazon or ChristianAction.org.
Twilight in America. Well, as we come back here, of course, we're concerned about homegrown terrorism. We've, of course, mentioned the Boston Marathon bombing, and if anything was homegrown, it sure must have been there. I mean, these are people that came in from the outside, but were resident. They were here in our country and taking fireworks and draining the powder out of it, using it for bombs, and then the big cover-up with 3 more people discovering them. But one of the things we're talking about, you know, we've just gotten the word today. I've had several emails coming to me, one from a Jewish rabbi and another from a chaplain, Klingenschmidt, saying that the Pentagon has released a statement confirming that soldiers could be prosecuted for promoting their faith. They call it religious proselytization, and anybody that even talks about their faith, a deep held faith, can be court-martialed. And so if you talk about Christian faith, in fact, the report, Mr. Weinstein is the head of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, says Christians, including chaplains, sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ in the military are guilty of treason and of committing an act of spiritual rape as serious as a crime as sexual assault. He also asserts that the Christians sharing their faith in the military are enemies of the Constitution. Now, this is coming out of not some little storefront thing. It's the Pentagon, folks. Now, my question, Martin, if it happened to be an Islamic saying Allah Akbar while he pulled the trigger at Fort Hood, that's okay, because that's just workplace violence, right?
But, you know, this is kind of interesting and scary at the same time, more scary, I suppose, than interesting. But if we go back to November of last year, not that long ago, West Point put out a publication that defined right-wing violent groups. Mm-hmm. And it's a publication that they trained their officers with. Inside of this publication, they list Christian fundamentalists as a part of the right-wing violent group. Now, the publication says they don't know of any particular criminal acts by Christian fundamentalists, but they're in there because of the things they preach. The things that Christian fundamentalists preach are causing right-wing groups to go out and commit violent acts. So there you got one thing in the military. And then, just earlier last month, it was disclosed that in Pennsylvania, the Army Reserve was teaching a class that listed evangelical Christians as religious extremists.
Number one one on the list.
Number one on the list. And then a week after that, a lieutenant colonel in Kentucky sends out an email to his officers that listed domestic hate groups. Inside of that list was our organization, the American Family Association, and the Family Research Council. We are now a domestic hate group, according to this lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army. Then last week it became known that the Pentagon has shut down military websites, military officers from going to the Southern Baptist Convention website because of its radical content. And now we learn that the Pentagon thinks that it is a criminal act, a court-martial act, a treasonous act to go out and evangelize as a Christian. Can we actually look at all these things and say it's a mere coincidence that the Pentagon can continue to say that, this is just some rogue individual making these statements? I don't think so. I think it is a completely effort by people that sat down and said, let's go after Christians in the military and let's put our foot down on them and either get them kicked out, stop them from coming in, link them as hate groups, radical groups, and as violent groups.
2 weeks ago, I watched a video that was presented by Usama Dakdok, who is an expert in the field of Islam. He's a Christian. He was trained in Islam, trained in Islamic schools. He came from Egypt. However, he's a Christian, but he reads Arabic like it was English, and he understands it all. But he was talking about the issue of the standards that are there, that anybody who raises their voice regarding Islam is suspect. He played a videotape, in fact, two of them, one by FBI people. In fact, the informant was blacked out so you couldn't see their face and the voice was changed. And he indicated that the FBI is aware of this stuff going on. And it's my assumption, it's my opinion, that apparently some of these other things you're talking about may not be secret to law enforcement. It's my opinion. Now, in addition to that, he played a videotape, the head of the CIA giving accolades and kudos to Islam as his highly regarded religious group. Now, if the head of the CIA can sit there and extol the virtues of Islam, but a soldier or a sailor or a Marine or an Air Force guy cannot share his personal faith with a buddy, we've got some real problems here.
Well, we do have some real problems. It's a very scary thing when a lieutenant colonel comes out and tells his fellow officers that there's such things as called Army values. And these are the particular people who do not represent Army values. Basically, evangelical Christians, anti-gay groups, people who oppose Islam. These are not Army values. You're talking about Army values. You're talking about people that have guns, they have tanks, they have all kinds of soldiers. And you're preaching to them saying that Christians who hold conservative biblical views do not represent the values of the United States Army. This particular lieutenant colonel said, and those people that come into the service need to be watched from the time they come in to wherever they go after that. This is some pretty scary and frightening stuff when you talk about the idea that perhaps the U.S. Army may look at Christians as some type of enemy of the state.
We're going to open our phone lines right now because I know there are people all across the nation listening to this program and on the Internet and outside of our country as well. And if you'd like to call this number with your questions, you can talk to our guest today. Our phone number, not mailing address. Our phone number is 800-733-9829. It is toll-free from anywhere on the planet. And if you'd like to call in and share your thoughts and ask questions of our guest today, he has information that he has indicated he feels very accurate. You want to share your opinions? If you want to ask him questions about the book that he's being sued by the Islamic group for $30 million. And we welcome your calls. The lines are starting to light up. In fact, in a moment, they're going to be they're jammed at this moment. So we'll take your calls quickly and right to the point. As you call, simply give your name, where you're calling from, and just the point you'd like to address. Make it very quickly, because the lines are literally jammed and our time is very precious. And we have about 15 minutes remaining here, and we want to make sure that you get in. Let's go to McAllen, Texas, and talk with Sheila. And Sheila, you're on the air with Martin Mawyer.
Yes. I heard that the president was going to try to set up training camps for young people to create his own army that would be responsible just directly to him and nobody else, not like a regular army, but they would only be responsible to him. And I'm wondering if these training camps that you're talking about now could have any part of this due to the fact that he does have a Muslim background.
Thanks for the call, but I do not think that our government will be utilizing these particular individuals for anything. I don't, even though they failed to shut them down, I do think that they are very high on their list of criminal activities, and some of the members continue to go to jail. They continue to arrest individuals inside of these compounds. They just will not shut the compound itself down. I don't know that President Obama is setting up his own training camps that are only responsible to him. I have no knowledge of that, but we all have to go back in 2008 when he was running the first time as president, where he said that one day he would like to see a civilian police force that is as well funded as our United States military, and understand what in the world he ever meant by that.
I remember that. We're going to take your calls. Folks, make your questions brief and to the point. Quick questions, quick answers as the calls pour in here. Mary in Milwaukee, you're on the air with Martin.
Yes, I want to make it plain. I'm not trying to condone what these people in the service are doing, but one of the points I wanted to make is that maybe they're kind of worried that if the people start talking to one another, that they're going to start telling their buddies, well, you know, don't you realize that Christians aren't supposed to be bearing arms?
Martin, go ahead.
You know, I think one of the interesting things, and we all know this, is that once the media puts out there, the Pentagon puts it out there that there's something wrong with sharing your faith, once it's wrong to be a Christian, once it's wrong to be a member of these groups that the Army does not approve of, that immediately a lot of people out there think it's against the law to do it. And they want that impression out there. They want that same impression out there as if you walk down the streets in Virginia with an open weapon on your side, that people will go, oh, you're committing some type of criminal activity. I see a gun on your side, when it's perfectly legal to do so. But by continuing to put it out there, that's what Eric Holder and his group wants right now. They want to bash us. They want to slam us. They want you out there to think that we are nothing but a bunch of criminals, whether it's actually criminal yet or not.
Pete in New Orleans, Louisiana. Pete. Go ahead, Pete.
Yes. My name is Paige Brooks in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm a National Guard chaplain endorsed by the Southern Baptist Convention, and also I teach Islamic studies and theology at the New Orleans Baptist Seminary. I just want to sense of the Department of Defense real quickly, because we received as chaplains an email from the North American Mission Board that stated that it was not just the Pentagon servers that were blocking the SBC website. There's actually something on the SBC website itself that the SBC had to take care of in order to get it unblocked. So I don't think it's all the Department of Defense's responsibility and blame on them. I think there's another side of the story, and I just hear a lot of things in your comments, Martin, that seem to be kind of a doomsday scenario against the Department of Defense, and I don't think that all that's necessarily true.
Okay. Martin?
I hear what you have to say, but I am concerned about the blocking of the Southern Baptist Convention and whether it's true what they told you as to whether something on the website of the Southern Baptist Convention that's forcing the military not to be able to access it. I know enough about websites design and how groups are blocked from going from one website to the other that I find it even more remarkable to believe that somehow this is the fault of the SBC.
We'll be right back in 60 seconds. This is Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. We're continuing our series on a biblical worldview and money, 20 points. We're on point number 8 today. A wise man does not trust in riches. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 speaks to this. Now, as we've explained, there's nothing wrong with money or having money. It's really neutral. It's not money that's the root of all evil. It's the love of money. And we don't place our trust in our money. We place our trust in the Lord Jesus Christ alone. Number 9, a wise man understands that real money is gold and silver, and God owns it all. Haggai 2, verse 8 speaks to this. A wise man understands that real money is something that has intrinsic value, not a fiat paper currency that can be inflated at the whim of the politicians and the central bankers. So a godly man or a wise man understands what is of real value, what's a real hard asset, and they have diversification. The Bible speaks to that as well. We'll continue on our next program.
Okay, we're back here. The lines are jammed, and so as you call, make your questions quick and short. We'll try to get you quick answers. But coming back to Martin, you've had communication from the government as well, and you had an interesting story during the break. Share that with us.
Sure. I had a military intelligence officer call me directly on my phone because he wanted some of the research work that I was doing on these Islamic terrorist groups. And I told him, I said, well, a lot of our research that you're asking for, the photos and whatever, is on our website. He said, well, we're not allowed to go to your website. Your website is blocked because you're a radical organization, so I have to call you on the phone, and you have to actually send me the pictures by mail because I do not have access to your website. The military has blocked it. So I know this goes on, and to actually believe the Obama administration saying that it's the fault of the SBC is just another Obama lie that's being put out there. I don't believe it for 1 minute.
Let's go to William in McAllen, Texas, and William, you're on the air with our guest. Go ahead, William.
That's me?
Yes,
okay.
go, man.
Listen, if all these comments about Christians are running around in the government, why don't we take the government to court to fight for our basic religious freedoms?
You know, that's a very good question, and I think it will go to court at some point. It's one thing to sit around and talk about that Christians are domestic terrorist groups and that if you evangelize in uniform, we will court-martial you. And it's another thing to actually do it. And then it's a third thing, you got to win it in court. I hope and I pray that our courts still have enough sensible judges in there to realize that that would be a violation of the Constitution to start court-martialing Christians. But I wouldn't put it past this administration to try it.
Martin, in 1990, I had a phone call from a federal law officer. We were covering some issues dealing with pro-life. And he called me, he said in exactly 14 days there will be a new term describing pro-lifers. And he said the term will be going onto the media. It will be called domestic terrorists, pro-lifers. And within 14 days it was out there. So those are the stories. We're going to go quickly to Victoria, Texas. And Jacob, you're on the air. Go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
I
wanted to say, that lady that called from McAllen, that second caller, first caller, I forget which, but it's talking about Obama's little homegrown army thing. They already graduated the first group of them last year, and I seen a news story. They were on a ship off the coast of.
They were public service people, right?
Yes, sir. At AmeriCorps.
Okay.
And one more thing I wanted to say is, in the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That they have violated this in two ways. They've gone around Congress, and it wasn't that law was originally the drafts for that law were written talking about Christianity. There were some people that wanted to take that out of there because not all people were totally some are Unitarians and other things, but it's amazing to me that they respect everything but Christ.
Jacob from Victoria, Texas, thank you. Sorry, we've got to move very quickly here. We've got so many calls. Northport, Florida. Wesley, you're on the air. Right on. Go ahead. Real close to your phone, sir.
Hello?
Yes, Wesley, you're on the air.
Oh, yes. sir. My name is Wesley, and it's very interesting to hear this radio show. But I have a special gift regarding what is yet to happen. And when Vice President Biden was in Fort Myers, I happened to be there, and I gave him a letter regarding what God has shown me that is going to happen to America.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm sure that Vice President Biden will be, we'll find out how well he receives it. Thank you, Wesley. We've got to move right along. Port Huron, Michigan, very quickly. Harry, you're on the air.
Thank you. Martin, I've been working right alongside trying to see if we can close down these terrorist camps. What are we going to do to close them down? I've been on the phone with Washington all day today about it.
Well, to close them down, I think is basically going to be a part of civilians, and I don't mean that by running in and taking over the compound, but we can bankrupt them. And by exposing them right now for how they get their money trail, and that is through welfare fraud and workman comp fraud and unemployment fraud and pickpocketing, the drug running, the more we expose them, this group, the more Americans know who they are and where they exist, the more difficult it is for them to raise the type of money that they need to continue these compounds. And unfortunately, for right now, we can't rely on law enforcement because the FBI will not do anything about them, although state officials will. But that's the goal, to shut them down in my area, is to continue to expose them and alert Americans about them.
Ann, in Pennsylvania, you got about 30 seconds. Turn your radio down completely, Ann.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, I have a quick question. I'll ask it and I'll hang up. Is the guest you have on there and yourself, are you aware of Dr. Jack Van Impe and his wife, Dr. Rexella Van Impe, that they have a TV, they're on TV, and they're very much involved in exposing the Islam?
Okay, ma'am, we're not going to go that direction because we only have 30 seconds left. But we are aware that there are broadcasts who deal with this. And I don't mean to be unkind, but we're so short on time. Last one is Gloria. And Gloria, you got 30 seconds.
Okay. Doesn't our military take an oath to defend America against foreign and domestic enemies?
There we have it, Martin.
That's a scary part of this foreign and domestic enemies is right now the U.S. military, there are people in there that are trying to define Christian fundamentalists, Christian evangelicals, and Christian groups as domestic enemies. We need to not ignore this. This is a very serious thing.
Martin, I need you to give us your point of contact where people can get your website.
Sure, ChristianAction.org, and I certainly would appreciate people getting a copy of this book and learning more about these Islamic terrorist camps, and also send a message to the group that's suing us for $30 million that they will not silence us. ChristianAction.org. And the book Twilight in America, The Untold Story of Islamist Terrorist Training Camps Inside America. Where can they get that? They can get it at Amazon.com, or they can go to our website. It's number one on Amazon right now for terrorist books, and we need to keep it up there and keep people informed and let this particular terrorist group know that we're not going anywhere.
Martin, thank you for being with us today. Very interesting program, and America is going to have to look into these things. Thank you so much for keeping us informed.
Thank you, Dick. My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on Crosstalk.
Listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.